Stafford City Council, reminder if you have a cell phone to mute it or turn it off, it's totally up to you. Our Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by Councilman Mike Andazola, followed by the invocation. Would you stay standing for both, please?
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, Lord, we come before you this day, Lord, and we just ask that you guide us and direct us, Father, tonight, Lord, as we conduct a city business. Father, we thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Citizen comments on agenda items, B? None?
We have one, but he's going to speak when the agenda,
When-
is,
during
the
agenda?
items,
Okay.
yes.
And citizen comments on non-agenda items?
There is
No? Okay. All right, that's going to bring us to item 7.1, which is proclamation declaring September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month of 2023. B?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and City Council to proclaim the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Safford and bring awareness of the children currently battling cancer. We have a few words from Tori Cranford from the Nathaniel Foundation.
Mayor and Council, thank you tonight for speaking on this proclamation. We currently have had 17 children in Graham County that have battled cancer. Some have won and some have lost that fight. And during September, we want to just make sure that we continue to bring awareness here locally, that it's not forgotten. This is a year-long battle, but in September, if we can use this month to bring light to it, we would love to on every foundation we can. So thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So we need to enter into a motion to accept the proclamation for the month of September as
So moved.
Childhood Cancer Awareness. We have a motion. We have a motion by Councilman Mike Andazola and a second by Councilman Steve McGoy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. You go ahead and read it in, B. Want me to?
Yes, if you could,
Okay.
Mayor.
Whereas September is recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month to recognize the children and families affected locally, nationally, and worldwide by childhood cancers. And whereas each year in the United States, more than 15,780 children birth to 19 years of age are diagnosed with cancer, equal to about 42 children cancer diagnosis each day. And whereas approximately 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed with cancer before their 20th birthday, with this number increasing each year. And whereas there are 100 of children being treated for cancer in Arizona. Now therefore, I, Jason Couts, Mayor of the City of Safford, by authorizing vested in me, I do hereby proclaim September 2023 Arizona Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And so I appreciate you bringing that to us, and looking forward to many more Septembers and flying the childhood cancer. I think you guys have been doing it on city lawn, and anytime you want, you plan anything you want there. So
Thank you. And Brentwood's created a fabulous mural that's on the side.
yes, on
That
Kimpton's, yeah,
has all of our children on there.
perfect. We appreciate that. Thank you. That brings us to item 8, public hearing. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing for comments regarding the Prentice rezone. Jamie, you're already up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have a map that we'll share of the rezone area. This is a request for the Mayor and City Council to hold a rezone and a public hearing and first reading for a proposed rezoning of Graham County Parcel 101-08001. You'll see it in blue on the drawing on map. Planning and Community Development Department is in receipt of a rezone application from Kimberly Prentice for this parcel. She is requesting it to be rezoned from R2 Multiple Family Residential District to the C2 Highway Commercial District. The purpose of this district is to provide for commercial uses and services generally maintained in central business district fringe areas where the density of traffic and building area is not conducive to desirable residential living. This property is fronted on Relation Street and Highway 191. The district encourages heavier commercial establishments intended for highway locations. In your packet, there is a list of the allowed commercial uses there, and Ms. Prentice is here to discuss her possible plans for the property. And keep in mind that she will go through the complete commercial site review plan process with the Community Development Department and the other department heads before she's allowed to build or open her business. General plan compatibility. The purpose of the ordinance is to promote the health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and general welfare of the present and future inhabitants of the city by guiding development within the city in accordance with the general plan. Ms. Prentice had her neighborhood meeting on August 1st, 2023 at the Annex. A copy of the meeting notes is attached to the report. Staff has had no contact, no comment from the public about this case. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing at their regular meeting on August 21st, 2023, and the commission voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council approve rezone application for parcel 101-08001 for the following reasons. Number one, the rezone will provide for infill development. Number two, the rezone will allow for the expansion of a business within the city of Safford. The written decision is attached. You have attached to your documents the rezone application, neighborhood meeting minutes, Planning and Zoning Commission written report, and the ordinance for your review later in the evening. And with that, I will stand for questions, and Ms. Prentice is here as well to answer questions from the board of the public.
Once again, this is a public hearing, so it is open to the public, and as well as the council. I know that I'm going to miss the spook house that she had there for quite a few years, and I know that she recently has tore down the building, and it actually looks good, and I'm in favor of this. So.
Sometimes the people watching don't understand where it is, and this is south of the Circle K on Highway 191.
Yes, sir.
Right by Kim's Window Tinting. I believe it's an extension of her business, I'm not sure.
Yes, sir.
And also, the Planning and Zoning Committee voted unanimously to let this go through.
Yes, sir.
Good with it? No more highway frontage corner in town than that one.
Yeah. I think she's gonna do good things with it. Anybody else have anything? I think we're good to move forward. I'm gonna go ahead and close our public hearing and go on into our item 9.1. Let's see. Yeah. So, all right. Brings us to item 9.1, minutes. Request the mayor and city council to approve the minutes for August the 14th.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for Mayor and City Council to review and approve the August 14th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from the August 14, 2023 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the August 14th, 2023 council meeting minutes. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councilman Lopez.
When we get to the events, request for agenda items, there's a couple of things that were on these minutes that were requested for agenda items. I wanted to bring them up again to make sure where we were on them, where we stood, where our information may be.
Mayor and Councilman Lopez, I know a couple of those items are probably being addressed tonight, and then they are going to be presenting probably in the next meeting or the one following for the other items that were requested.
Okay, we'll make it part of the record.
Yes.
Any more?
No, sir.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Brings us to item 9.2, the IGA with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home, 501c3. John?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Staff is seeking approval by Mayor and City Council to participate in an IGA with the town of Pima, the town of Thatcher, Graham County, and the Samaritan Home, a local 501c3, the provisions of which are a part and attached agreement. The facility in question is located at 114 West 5th Street, Safford, Arizona, 85546. I won't go over the background. I think everybody's familiar with the history of the project, so I'll go right to the analysis unless you have any questions on that background. Analysis, the facility located at 114 West 5th Street on the north side of State Highway 70, just west of State Highway 191, will receive an in-kind utility services from the city of Safford, with the towns of Pima and Thatcher agreeing to share the cost of those utilities. The support will continue as long as the facility is operated as the Samaritan Home as described here and in the attached, and that should be IGA, not MOU. And as long as the parties to the original agreement continue to provide the agreed-upon operational and financial support. Town of Thatcher and the City of Safford have also agreed to provide one-time startup payments of $5,000 each. Since the original writing of the agreement, the Town of Pima has also agreed to contribute $750 as a startup payment. In the case of Graham County, $250,000 has already been expended in support of building repairs and renovations, as well as the purchase of equipment and appliances and furniture. This is not a homeless shelter. It would not allow for overnight stays. I have attached an agreement, the relevant sections for which are on page, they begin on page 87 of 202. And I did want to bring attention to items 2 and 3 within that section under agreement. I have provided council with a document that shows amendments that reflect activities that occurred between the time that I wrote the agreement and today. Most notably, the town of Pima took action to provide the $750 up front, and they also agreed to pay 15% of the utility cost. So what I would like to do right now is read items 2 and 3 that I would like to seek an amendment from council on to the agreement that's in your packet, at which time you could vote on that amendment, and then if it's agreed to, then we can go on to the amended document. So let me read what I have provided to you as an adjustment to the document packet. The city, Pima, and Thatcher shall cover the cost of utilities for the project to include water, wastewater, gas, electric, and trash pickup. Costs will be split 15% for Pima, 42.5% for the city, 42.5% for Thatcher. The city shall provide a copy of the total monthly utility bill that will be used to calculate the cost breakout for each participant. Number 3, the city and Thatcher agree to make a one-time contribution of $5,000 each in support of project startup costs. Pima agrees to provide $750 for startup costs. And again, it goes on to discuss the fact that the county has already provided $250,000 to renovate the building, which I believe is complete. In fact, Vaughn Grant is here to speak a little bit this evening on where we stand right now. I believe tomorrow's a grand opening. And so he will discuss that with you. And then also, the Gila Valley Samaritan Home will be the 501c3 that will run the operation. Operation hours will be Monday through Friday between 9 and 5 p.m. With that, I would turn it back over to you, Mayor. I don't know if you want to try and discuss the amendment first, or you'd like Vaughn to speak.
Sure. Well, we're going to, first of all, I want to recognize that this has been a community effort, and it's been a long time getting here.
Yes, sir.
And Vaughn has taken the wheelhouse and has ran with it, and even when he got no traction, you stayed with it. And you were able to get to the other side, even though there was some storms in between. But you made it. And I'm very proud of Pima and Thatcher for stepping up, even though it's located in the city. But they've stepped up their game, and because this is a community, I don't want to call it a crisis. It's just a community event that is going to benefit, a lot of people that are just down on their luck. And so I'm for it, and I would just ask that we entertain a motion to approve the amended section first so that we can read this, we can approve the whole thing, so.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any discussion?
No, sir, I just was reiterated, it was a interfaith involvement too, I believe, Vaughn, and that came a long ways, and I appreciate that too.
Sure has. So we have a motion and a second to approve the amended reading as John had read. Do we want me to read it again, or is that
No,
okay?
and Mayor, that's why I read it into the record, so now it's officially read into the record, so we know exactly what the verbiage is.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. So now I'm going to entertain a motion to approve an IGA with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home.
I move that we approve this agreement, including the amendment using items 2 and 3 as read.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the IGA with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home with the amended sections of 2 and 3 as read into the record by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. B, would you go ahead and read that in?
Approval of the IGA with the Gila Valley Samaritan Home 501c3 has been approved with the amended as stated by the City Manager John Casella. And it is to participate in the IGA with the Town of Pima, Town of Thatcher, Graham County, and the Samaritan Home, Local 501c3.
Thank you. Vaughn, would you like to speak?
I can give you some more, even better news than what you have so far.
Yeah.
Give me better news.
Come on.
I like better news.
Yes.
Mayor, councilman, members, thank you. First of all, there is the open house tomorrow from 4 to 6 o'clock with the ribbon cutting at 5:30. And as we speak, there is a tile person in the bathroom working, hope through the night in order to finish. That's the last thing there is to finish up the bathrooms there. So hopefully that will be all set and ready to go. Real quickly, I know every time this has been brought up, everybody's mind goes to strictly to the anywhere from 18 to 24 homeless individuals that we all see on a daily basis within town. And there's no question that this is going to be an opportunity to provide care and mercy to them in the way of showers, in the way of laundry, items that they can pick up there as far as basic food and emergency supplies, hygiene kits, things along this lines. It will be a great help to them. But over the last, since we've been building those over the last 6 months, what has come to our attention is I don't know if anybody realizes that we have approximately 22 current right now coded homeless individuals going to either elementary or high school in Graham County that are labeled that they officially don't have a specific home or individual. Maybe their parent is incarcerated or something along those lines, that they're either staying with other than family members or on their own from one couch to the next. That totally surprised me of going through. And what we've also had come out recently is that far more than just the homeless that we see initially that we'll be able to help, and hopefully maybe a handful of them be able to pull them out of their situation, although 3/4 of them are there by choice. But hopefully we'll be able to help a few to be able to get out of that. We're getting countless numbers right now of individuals just find themselves homeless for a matter of 1 week or 2 weeks because they just lost their rent, had to be kicked out, things along those lines, with the majority of them being women with children. And it happens on almost a weekly basis. And we just went into an agreement with the Community Partnerships of Southern Arizona, which is just underneath the Arizona Department of Housing, that has provided us 2 grants. One grant that is provided that will take care of 3/4 of our total salary for one individual there at the home. And that individual also is a case manager in the state of Arizona, that they'll be able to assess the needs of the individuals and actually provide them up to 2 years of housing provided by taxpayer money through the state of Arizona. The second grant that is within maybe just weeks of being finished, 99% of that, is an additional 75% for a second individual full-time at the facility. That will also be a case manager as well. But just as important as that, there'll be $60,000 available for us in 2024 to be able to provide anywhere up to 10 days of stay for individuals, whether they're in a hotel or whether they're in a apartment or something along that lines, that will be able to help the entire community out. And they're coming from Pima, they're coming from Thatcher, Safford, even in Greenlee County. They find themselves needing something up to 2 weeks. We'll have the funds to provide that to them to be done. So just, it's great news. There's a lot of places stepping up now that there's actually a place they can use and have individuals in there that they can use as case managers to be done. And there's also one other with the River Church, that there's a couple of individuals within it also that will be set up to also be case managers, to my knowledge, from there. So good things happening. Open house 4 to 6 o'clock tomorrow evening, ribbon cutting at 5:30. I think that covers the most of it, but it's amazing what it's going to extend to besides what we actually thought we were just starting with. There's a lot of people that are going to be helped in the many years to come through the Samaritan Home. So we're really excited. Mayor, if there's any questions or whatever, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
I don't have any at this time. Councilman Lopez, you have?
No, sir. Thank you, Vaughn.
Well, once again, I'm just one person. There's many people behind it. It's incredible that we've had, John has been a huge pushing between getting this community from, Pima to Thatcher to Safford together. And has brought us together for almost over a year now, meeting on a monthly basis, which I don't remember ever doing that. And Councilman Lopez, there is approximately like 17 individual churches and organizations right now part of this. And I don't think that's ever happened in our community ever before, and that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Vaughn, again. Brings us to item 9.3, Oktoberfest Special Events Liquor License Application. Mick?
Good evening. Tonight I'd like to present the following. This is a request for Mayor and City Council to review and approve the Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control application presented in the support of the 3rd Annual Oktoberfest event in association with the United Way of Graham-Greenlee Counties and the Graham County Chamber of Commerce. This application requires approval by the local governing body for final consideration by the Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control. Staff recommends approval. This is a one-day event scheduled for Friday, October 20th from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. and will take place at the Safford City Hall lawn. Proceeds from the event are to benefit the United Way of Graham and Greenlee Counties. The event license application provides a detailed security plan similar to that I presented last month for the Salsa Fest, which includes a cordoned off area identified by barriers and high visibility orange fencing, and clear signage identifying the designated event area. Security during the event will consist of 1 Safford police officer and 5 security professionals who are responsible for checking proper IDs and issuing wristbands for those individual patrons who are able to purchase and consume alcohol beverages. Security will also ensure no alcohol is allowed to enter or leave the premise. In closing, Oktoberfest is another opportunity for us to come together as a community for a great cause in support of the services provided across the Gila Valley by the United Way of Graham Greene counties. Barring any further questions, gentlemen, concludes my presentation. Thank you.
My application's a blank piece of paper. Is it filled in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure because my paperwork shows a blank. I see Mr. Bryce's signature. I guess that's all I need. Okay, there it is. That's part of this.
Still on it.
Mine shows.
Yeah, mine didn't. I'm sure you guys have never missed one, so.
Councilman Lopez, that's part of those technical
That's part of it.
difficulties we've been having.
Okay.
It's been a Monday.
But we kind of had Mick up here first off. We had to shake him.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Oktoberfest special events liquor license application.
I move that we approve the recommendation to the State Liquor Board for the Oktoberfest Special Events Liquor License application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Oktoberfest special events liquor license application as stated by Councilman McGoy, seconded by Councilman Andazola. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Vance, you have anything you'd like to share?
Well, thank you, Mayor. We're headed after it for Salsa Fest and all these events coming this fall. Thanks for all your support. We appreciate every single one of you.
Appreciate it, thank you. Thanks for your help down there at the City Leagues and Towns. Brings us to item 9.4, the library customer conduct policy update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for Mayor and Council to approve an updated customer conduct policy. A little bit of background, the current policy was adopted in July of 2020. We try to review these policies at a minimum of once every 3 years, just to make sure they're keeping up with library standards and guidelines. We have highlighted some of the areas of the policy that have been updated, specifically the health and safety section, to include examples of situations where the borrowing of materials may be suspended, include but are not limited to evidence that materials checked out to a customer may have been returned with bodily fluids that are a health hazard to other customers and or are damaging to library materials. And we've also added ARS statutes to the gambling and service animal policies, and we've corrected grammatical errors as well. We do recommend that the mayor and council approve the updated policy, and the city attorney has reviewed it and is comfortable with it as well.
Entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the library customer conduct policy update.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the library customer conduct policy update. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
All right.
Library circulation policy update.
Yes. This is a request for mayor and council to approve the updated circulation policy. This one was updated in June of last year. And again, we try to update it. In this case, we've updated it again. And the areas of the policy that we updated specifically are the proof of residency. We currently accept it in a digital or physical format. We just actually haven't put it in our policy, so we went ahead and changed that. The temporary housing has been changed to remove the halfway houses, group homes and or shelters, and include motels or hotels. We've added a reference materials definition, and we've also changed our collection fee that we're charging the customers now. It's changing from $10 to $12, and that's due to an increase into what we are being charged by Unique Management, which is the company that manages our collection service. And again, we've corrected some grammatical errors as well. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Entertain a motion for item 9.5.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the library circulation policy update and a second by Councilman Hemphill. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion passes. Brings us to item 9.6, library meeting room policy update.
Yes, again, this is a request for the mayor and council to approve an updated meeting room policy. And this policy was adopted in 2020, in September of 2020. And again, we wanted to clarify some areas in the policy, and one specifically is that commercial organizations or individuals cannot use the library meeting rooms, and to clarify prohibited activities in the meeting rooms. And we also updated this policy as our annex is open, so this also applies to the library annex building as well. And again, the city attorney's reviewed this and is comfortable with the updates as well.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the library meeting room policy update.
Second?
And a second, Councilman Hemphill. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10-1, contracts, agreements, and bids, substation bus and switchgear. Gabe?
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to authorize a bid award for the construction phase of the substation bus and switchgear. The bid award is proposed to be given to Altitude Energy LLC. Just a quick background and reminder, this is for the construction phase of the substation bus and switchgear, which will allow us to isolate different components of our infrastructure around the substation, allow for our guys to be able to work on it instead of taking down a whole system. So if you guys remember, this was kind of broken into 3 different phases. We've already ordered the breakers, the switches, the hardware. I've approached you guys a little while ago about the infrastructure for the steel component. And so this will be the final and third phase of it for the construction. We did a formal bid that was issued to the public, and it had a bid opening date of August 17th. 3 bids were received, and they've been reviewed for completion for T&D. If you guys look and remind you guys on the analysis, this will be funded by enterprise funds from the electrical department. We're happy with the bidding procedures. We had a nice healthy bid. All of them were within 6% of each other. So if you guys look down at the budget recap, we had a $2 million budget on this one. The lowest bid being just a touch over $1.6 million. So this is a request for the construction phase of the $1.6 million. $65,351. What that does to our final budget is we're approximately about $233,000 under budget, or about 11% under budget. So, with that being said, staff recommends that the mayor and council to approve the bid and enter into a contract with Altitude Energy for the construction of the substation bus and switchgear in the amount of $1,665,351. It's also recommended to allow the city manager or his designee authority to execute contract orders not to exceed 10% of the contracted value if in the best interest of the city to do so. With that, I'd field any questions you guys may have.
Sir, this has been on the table for a while. We've had about 3 presentations on this. Took a little while to get here, some delays. Now, this is just to isolate the bus work so you can work on it.
This will be an upgrade to it as well. There's going to be some infrastructure that allows it to be able to isolate individual lines and
What I'm
sectors.
concerned about too, and I had brought it to the manager's attention, is last year we were out of power for quite some time. And I feel that was needless, because if you saw, parts of Thatcher were lit up. We could have had some switching done, come from the Freeman sub, which is near Daly Estates. That could have been switched around, and we could have been lit up hours before we were. I think that was wrong, not on our part, but we need to go back out there in that desert and bring in 2 circuits that are on them transmission poles, and so that we don't have to do that again.
So I'm just an engineer, not an electrician.
And I'm just
I appreciate
vocally
it, Councilman.
complaining out, because that left a bad taste in my mouth that we got left.
No,
that way.
absolutely, and I know that we can blame Dan for that since he's gone. I'm just kidding. But it's definitely, we'll take that into account. We'll look at that. I know T&D's been pretty heavily involved. This does allow us to get more flexibility within our circuits to be able to bring more power on quicker in different sections of it
Okay.
instead of a whole system down.
Okay, we could have an alternated route, so.
So Gabe, we came under budget on this about $300K, right?
233rd.
So when
yeah.
staff's gonna come back to us recommending that we increase anything, I can say, wait a second, we got $300,000, so we're not gonna pass that on to our consumers. That's just want you guys to know that right up front.
Appreciate
Now
it.
that I know that I have 300,000,
I
play
will
with.
relay that message to Jason. just
So
so
don't
he
be
knows.
bringing me back anything that's going to increase our utilities. All right, everybody sounds good on this?
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion? Did I get one already? No? Okay. Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the substation bus and switchgear construction award for $1,665,350.44. Is that
Correct.
Altitude Energy? Is that who you're wanting?
That's who we're wanting, correct?
Right? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Thank
Thanks, Skip. Brings us to item 10.2, and if I'm not mistaken, this here better be a good presentation, because I think this took my infrastructure.
It did.
And we're gonna talk about that later on in the meeting, because a month and a half to prep that should have already been done. But go ahead with the solar presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, I bring this before you to approve the city's participation in a solar array and battery project for the acquisition of additional electrical resources and reliability for the city. The project would provide the city with opportunity to acquire additional in-house renewable energy resources, which would be made available by solar and battery power generating facilities. So there's two current funding opportunities. One is through the USDA. It's the Powering Affordable Clean Energy, or also known as PACE, along with the Solar Investment Tax Credit under the Inflationary Reduction Act. These programs could provide up to 90% forgiveness on projects providing certain terms which the city meets. With the support of a third-party vendor, Verigy, a nationwide engineering and construction company, the representatives here with us this evening, we believe the city could create the needed design and documents in a short time that we have to qualify for these national programs. Currently, the city of Safford has a total of 21.6 megawatts of energy resources that are available without the need for a market-based transaction. During the majority of the year, these resources are sufficient to allow the city to meet its needs and sell some amount of excess capacity back to the market. However, during the peak summer months, usage exceeds our 20.6 megawatts. Historically, when the need for electrical energy has exceeded our resource allocation level, we have resorted to real-time market-based transactions. Power purchases in this manner is more expensive since demand during this period is high, and others are also seeking peak power. However, current market conditions have been characterized, you guys have seen this, by the volatility and the high prices over the last few years. The program would allow the city to take advantage of this significant cost savings through these two funding programs, and these facilities would be owned by the city and would produce needed renewable energy at a much lower cost than the market can provide, especially during peak hours. It further ensures that the resources will be available to the city throughout, thereby limiting concerns regarding energy shortage. Let me pull this.
Not talking.
Is not
It's
talking.
not talking.
Yeah, if you'll drive for me, John, appreciate it. So again, these federal programs are both the PACE program and the ITC commercial. So within this original program, the PACE program, it's a requirement and expectation from the federal government to increase clean energy in rural America and make it significantly more affordable for customers, especially in distressed communities like the city of Safford. To be an eligible applicant, municipalities have to have a population under 20,000. The project must produce renewable energy for resale and serve at least 50% rural customers. Safford qualifies for up to 40% of the principal forgiveness because of the city is established in this distressed area. So this loan program is based on a loan between 1 million and 100 million, and is limited to a funding of 1 billion. So if there's 10 municipalities within the whole United States, that's how much money is available through the federal government. It's a very small window they've given for us that we are able to meet this, and with Verigy's help, we'd be able to get this submitted into the federal government for approval of this grant. So what we'd need to be applied to apply, we need to produce a profile for the city of Safford, a financial report. Verigy would provide our technical description of the project and our project narrative. And this work would have to be done and submitted into the federal government by September 29th. So if we look further into our Inflationary Reduction Act, so I've got some examples in here a little further on, but just to break down what this Inflationary Reduction Act does for us is it provides an additional credit to us with a base ITC credit of 30%. Because the materials that we'd use to construct this solar array and battery system, 100% of the steel and iron, it gives us another 10% added on top of that 30%. And because of our low income community delineation by the federal government, we'd get another 10% added on top of that. So if we do the math, that's a possibility of up to 90% of the project being funded by our federal government, but providing this resource for the city of Safford for the next 25 to 40 years. There's a few questions that we have in here. If you guys have any questions outside of this, I feel free to throw them at me. Specifically, we asked whether these two programs would work harmoniously together. We submitted that question in, and they responded that they not only work together, but they look forward to the possibility of it and actually welcome the stacking of the two programs together.
How many acres is this going to take to produce a solar field?
So let me put this up just real quick. So we put just a simple scenario together, Mayor. That's not rolling up, but just around a 10 megawatt. Yeah, it's the next slide down right there. So if we just did something that resembled our Box Canyon program, a 10 megawatt with a 5 megawatt batteries, would sit in the 60 million range. With that, that's roughly a 30 acre solar array that we could set.
30 acres.
30 acres.
And it has to be able to have battery backup, so there has to have a building in it as well.
So a building would be secured in it. So on top of this, so not shown in this example, but a piece that kind of reflects back to what Mr. Lopez was talking about. We're planning on placing this on the outskirts to the north of the city, which would then allow us to provide our secondary substation to be placed between that and the connections into our existing system, which would hook us to our loop in two different locations. And so we'd see much less impact to our city through that, along with the fact that we'd be producing our own power during those downtimes. And with the battery backups to support it, we'd be able to really bring the city of Safford to the forefront of this renewable energy drive.
So, under my understanding is solar is basically like purchasing a new car. The moment you drive it off the lot, you start.
It definitely has a depreciation over that. Within this program and our partners in Verigy, there's a 25-year lifespan that system is guaranteed for production with an overall life expectancy of 40 years. It is similar to a new car, Mayor, that, as you say, there's a certain amount as once you plug it in, it's going to depreciate in value. With that, the federal government's willing to foot almost 90% of the bill if we want to try and bring this into our system. And again, there's a very small window for us to meet this first grant. The second portion of that grant's available long-term, but this initial PACE PACE portion is, we'd have to make this movement and get it submitted in by the 29th of September. So,
Councilman Lopez. how many houses are you gonna be able to feed off of this if we did it?
I'm not sure we're gonna be able to achieve this anytime soon, but I was hoping that some of the other counselors would help me in this. I was ready to listen to some of their comments on what they thought about it, before I chimed in.
I think it's something that we need to consider doing. We can't continue to be at the mercy of the market every summer when the costs rise. And when you get an opportunity to have this much of it forgiven or paid for, I think it's something we seriously need to consider doing.
And
So, go ahead.
this is just, we're saying we want to go forward and apply for this grant or this
So,
program, right?
exactly, what
I mean, we're not saying we're gonna get it.
No, so what I'm requesting this evening, John, if you go to down right there, is the stage one of this request. So it's I'm requesting a letter of intent, which would allow us to partner with Verigy in this phase one, and and they would help us produce this narrative that would create our letter of interest to the federal government to request to be a part of that program. So with that, if we look at this, just stage one, so VRG is saying they would provide a preliminary layout, a preliminary analysis, interconnection location, projected cost analysis, and a project narrative. And so with that, we would be submitting that in with our letter of intent to participate in the grant, and then we'd get a response back. So this evening, really what we're looking for is a commitment from the city to take this in. Verigy's been willing to step up and put their skin in the game and say, if this letter of interest is declined from the federal government and we aren't able to move forward in that program, they would pay 50% of the engineering fees and request us to pay 50% of that engineering fee. That's how much they're positive of our acceptance into the program. If the city at that point in time, once we are submitted, and if the federal government came back and said we were accepted, and the city at that point in time decided we didn't want to move forward, we would have a $25,000 payment for the engineering that occurred over the next 3 weeks to Verigy. So this evening, I'm just looking for the approval to move forward with our letter of intent and the letter of interest with that financial commitment for that.
I think you're asking for a little bit more than that. You're also asking for us to cover some costs too, right?
So, yeah, just the cost of this.
If we take this, it's 12.5.
Exactly.
So by the city partnering up with this Verigy or whatever, what are they getting out of it?
So Verigy is.
Yeah, I want to know. I like the bottom line numbers. What are they getting out of it?
So Jason.
Nobody just partners up for it.
They're an engineering and a construction firm, and so we would be able to come in.
They're their own engineering firm?
And construction firm.
That's why they could eat up their own 50%.
Exactly. But they're willing to set that out in front of us to do that work for us, to say, hey, we think this is such a good program and that the city of Safford can be willing to get accepted into the program, that they're willing to put that out in front of us. But yes, they would be through a state contract that's similar to what they've done in the past. They would be able to go to a sole source, and they would come in and ultimately provide a turnkey project for us with the support of the grant writers and the engineering and all the documentation that would be required to submit that into the federal government.
I help you out any, Arnold?
Who else is using this company? I know you said Chin Lee and one other place, but from the examples that were in my paperwork, it wasn't to a scale like what you're asking for.
Edward, would you like to speak just a little bit to some of the past projects you guys have worked on just
And what's
recently?
the hurry? What's the hurry? Why do we have to do it by September 29th? Who is impressing that date on us?
So the federal government actually opened this window starting in July through September 29th, that if you want to be a part of this grant process, that's when it has to be submitted.
The federal government's in a hurry?
There's only 10 communities, a minimum of 10 communities are going to get this throughout the whole United States, and so it's a very small group of individual municipalities that meet all of those requirements to meet that grant writing, so.
And then we already have a commitment out in Florence for a solar farm that we've already committed to that's gonna supply us with 10 meg of energy. And that takes care of our peak. That's why we went ahead and did that last year.
It does.
To cover ourselves with that energy.
Our Box Canyon would meet our max requirement currently with today's requirements. This is more of that future look ahead, that we have the ability to plan for the future and provide with significant costs provided from the federal government to push us into the future. And until we needed those resources, we could sell those on the open market to pay.
That's
our
why this
cover.
council committed to that, because we were looking ahead.
Yep,
And we're
exactly.
still, when's our Box Canyon coming on, 24?
25.
25?
Yep, June of
So
25.
We already have that development in our portfolio.
We do.
And we're chained with about 32 or 38 other entities that this is all one big group
Exactly.
that's in that solar array.
Yep, in that
And
singular
they
solar
will
array.
handle any excess cell, or we can purchase, some of the stuff you're saying here, we already have
We do.
with this other agreement.
I agree.
And also, you're talking, or I feel that you're talking about, you're linking this to a substation. Now, is that the substation we're also looking to build too, a transmission power transformer substation?
It is.
These monies would help us build that?
Yes, they would. Through the engineering process, if it was determined that that substation would be needed to bring those in, then that substation would become part of this project. And so instead of us paying somewhere between 8 and 10 million just for a substation, we'd be paying in this 12 to 15 to get that substation and our solar array.
We could get our substation we've been kicking around as part of these monies and still have the same relief money-wise?
Yes, we couldn't know that for sure until our engineering is completed to ensure that we have that connection requirement in our process, but that's the point of
So
taking it out.
up front right now, you're asking us to gamble 25,000 to just see what we got, to see what our cards are gonna be.
So within,
12.5.
12.5, that's half
Because
of
if
it.
it don't go through, then
yeah, if
their
the
own
federal
engineering
government
firm's going to
denies
give
it,
12.5.
Verigy's willing to put their skin in the
What
game
will
with
that
us.
12.5 get us? Will it get us enough look to where we know more than what we know tonight?
Definitely. So it'll give us a preliminary layout, a preliminary analysis on our power usage, the interconnection location, which that interconnection location would determine whether we need that additional substation or not in this program, and then the projected cost analysis and a project narrative
So
is
we,
what's coming in that initial letter of intent that we're submitting to the
so we'd
government.
have to look for possibly 30 acres if that's the amount we figure we need to get 10 meg.
Yeah.
If we need 10 meg, because we have 10 meg coming.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of different pieces that would go in there, but it'd be really around that analysis that we're chasing through
There's a
that
lot of
engineering.
what ifs.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, because I mean, we don't even know what we're gonna do with the batteries when we're done with it. Some of the science is not totally in this. It hadn't been reached yet, I don't feel.
We all know technology develops every day, and so those technologies are gonna continue to change and increase and improve over the next 25 years as we move through that.
This sounds really good, but it almost feels like we're being forced into this like tonight, and if we knew this was happening in July and it's just now coming to us in September to make it happen by the end of September, that's almost a dead giveaway for me to put the brakes on and say, I'm out.
So the federal government put it out, Jason, that there's not a clear, again, I've been chasing grants on a regular basis, on a weekly and monthly basis, trying to find pieces and parts. This secondary part, the IRA, was a grant that we were already aware of, and I was working with another contractor. Verigy found this first PACE grant and brought it to us. as late as last week is the first thing I could find in print anywhere on the internet around this PAC program specifically. And so it's really that combination of both of those leading up to the value that could be brought through this program.
The 35 acres, just to get us, what, 5 megs, when we, as Councilman Lopez has brought it up, that we bought into a 10 meg facility, then we don't even have to worry about the upkeep on it or anything. You know,
There still is a purchase price with the power that comes
There
from
is a
that.
purchase
There
price.
is a
There
purchase
is.
price.
And it's 20 meg, right? Not,
No, it's
No,
10 megawatts.
it's 10. And this one is,
So this one
says
hasn't been
5.
determined. So within this, we have 10 megawatts. Just the example that we put up there was just so that the numbers were understood. It would be based on where we wanted to go with it. The 10 megawatt with the 5 battery backup is what they had with a similar project that was just completed in New Mexico with a price tag in the 60 million range. And so we just put that as an example so you could see how those numbers fall out.
And oh, Mr. Moore, go ahead.
I just wanted Jason to tell me how far off I am, but this 12.5 is, that we're gambling, is 1% of what we supplemented our people on in the last electricity jump before we had to raise our rates, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
1.2 million it cost us for not having this in place, and here we're talking $12,500 to possibly put it in place. It's 1% of what we spent. I don't see the fight. I say we go.
I don't either. And to clarify too, the only way we'd be on the hook for 25 is if we were approved and we chose not to proceed.
Exactly.
Again,
Still nothing compared to
Right,
what we're spending
right.
on electricity.
and.
On a
and
regular basis.
To just continue to try to get ahead of this as opposed to trying to play catch up with big dollars.
I mean, like I said, we were looking at the IRA process where we're getting a 50% possibility. We were looking for projects that we could fit in with that around our substation and whatever we could do for our interconnections. And when this PACE program came on top of it with such a short window to apply for, it was one of those where we had to jump on it. I mean, you're talking about, 10 cents on the dollar for a project that provides the city of Safford needs for 20, 25 years.
Including some cost on a substation that we're already.
We're
building.
already planned on
It's-
incurring.
It's a kind of a no-brainer, I think.
That's the draw right there. If we can get our substation linked with this grant and money savings, that's what we've been looking for.
And we would know that after our first stage, whether that substation would be able to be pulled in off of our initial analysis from the internet connection location and the
They're just
analysis
doing that for
and the
your
labs.
vote, Arnold.
Yeah,
They're
that's
saying that
probably-
it's there for your vote.
That's why I needed to hear from you, but I know why you brought this to us, Mr. Brimhall. That's what you're out there doing for us, is looking for things like this.
So with your example that you gave us,
Yeah.
60 million, was that purchased from land? No. So you guys gotta remember, this all sounds good to you, but you gotta find 35 acres
So-
to put this on.
So we've
Yes.
located probably 3 locations that the city already owns that are possibilities as far as locations next to the landfill, out near the airport, or down near our sewer treatment plant. All locations that would work for that interconnection piece and for the acreage that the city already owns. And some of that land being not worthless, but of no use
And
this
the kind
point
of
in
ground
time.
that it takes to do this is pretty much worthless, so if you did have to buy it, it's gonna be pretty cheap.
And Mayor, members of council, this is short notice, to be sure. But I think part of the idea behind the presentation tonight is, number one, to pursue the grant dollars that we've all talked about in different aspects of, trying to find funding to supplement our utilities. The other part of this, while it is a somewhat short-term notice, the amount of money that you would invest up front that might be able to answer a lot of these questions at stage one would give us a much better idea of, given the amount of discounts that are available for this project, if the substation was to be included, you may end up paying for a substation and getting a solar field for nothing, right? At which point you're now generating your own power. You'd have 20 megawatts of power that during most periods of the year would take you completely out of a commodity market and volatility. You'd be paying for it with solar. The life cycle, and again, I think the gentleman from Verigy can kind of talk about some of the particulars, but tends to be about a 40-year window with decreasing efficiency over time, to be sure. And you would still have access to Mesquite. You would use your cheapest power first, you would sell the rest. And so I think if we at least go through the process of doing the preliminary analysis to determine if this project does in fact help us get a substation at a reduced cost and give us power that we can then sell back to the grid, it might be at least worth looking at stage one, just to get some of this interconnect location, project cost analysis, give us a little bit more narrative that might be able to answer more of your questions with a relatively low buy-in. You may find that the investment is worth it, and if it's not, again, in terms of the utility fund as a whole, even if you're in at $25,000, it's not even a rounding error of a rounding error. So again, it would allow us to at least do a little bit of research, and I understand, you know, this is a lot to take in, it's very short notice, I get that. But again, if we learn something, at least from stage one, to figure out and have a better idea of where we are in the market, maybe it's worth making that upfront investment. And again, these are the kinds of issues, and we've talked about others, that really is issues that this council, I think, really has to kind of address and wrestle with. As I joked with one of the council members, this isn't a boot policy. This is something more significant, and this is something that obviously staff will require council to take a look at and really decide, is this something you're comfortable with? If so, we can go forward with stage one. If not, we won't, and I clearly understand that, but I felt that given the opportunity and the amount of money that's involved, it was something we should bring to you, at least put in front of you and let you make that decision based on the information that we have to this point.
Well, I think, sometimes, John, I think you throw money out there like if it's just nothing, but $12,500 is a lot of money to throw out there for a what if. It is to me, and it is to my constituents that has elected us to do this, so it's a lot of money to me.
I understand that, but your budget is $80 million.
And so are the utility bills that our constituents are paying, that we've got to get
But
proactive about.
this doesn't guarantee that's gonna come down.
There is no guarantee.
There's no, no,
Exactly,
but
there's
we
no,
gotta
it's
try.
just like, this
But
is the
we
what
can't-
if
we
too.
can't sit back and not do anything, and that's not gonna, there's no chance of an improvement if we don't do anything.
But we've got a 10 megawatt, well, you know what, we can come up for a vote on it, cause I'm voting no. But we got a 10 megawatts coming into play in 2025. This one's not even gonna be ready in 2025.
And what might our,
And you know,
costs be in we have to think ahead a little bit.
Well, exactly,
In
just-
2025, what might the cost be?
just like we thought ahead on the water issue, we sold the water issue to Pima. We gained 250 homes, and now we lost money doing that. And so what are we gonna do? Extra 10.
I don't know that means we're done, though, for me.
Well, I agree, because the nice thing about it is what Councilman Lopez is saying is the
Substation.
the substation is the big thing, but it's a what if.
So Mayor,
Now-
just one more comment I wanted to make. In our Box Canyon agreement, we originally went out for battery backup power to come with that package. And in the final iteration, the batteries were pulled out because the price had tripled from the original budget to that. And so there's no battery support whatsoever in that Box Canyon program, where we have the ability, we don't know what that is, but the example that I put up there was just a rough example. If we decide we wanted to go with 5 megawatts of power and we want to do 15 megawatts of battery to support the Box Canyon, we have that capability also to change through that. That would be done through all the iterations of the engineering, trying to figure out what's the best answer for the city of Safford, so.
Sounds
Now,
good.
I think also our excess solar power, because we belong to that SPA group, they will handle the selling of our excess solar power. So that gets handled too. We don't have to add staff to do that.
Nope.
That gets handled just like it came from Box. They'll take care of our excess. So that's a plus there. And we only get power from them batteries about 4 hours a day
Yep.
before they bleed off. It's
And,
not like
and that's
people
usually,
think it's-
you're usually taking that during your peak,
Yeah.
which for us is mid-afternoon, about 3:30 or 4, which we still have a solar array that's gonna be producing significant amounts during that point in time. You're usually gonna take those battery powers and sell them on your open market in the 7 and 8 and 9 o'clock hours. That would hit the Phoenix timeframes when their peak hours hit. And so you're selling your power at peak, the peak of peak selling prices.
And is that profit ours?
Yes. Yeah, that rolls right into our,
Goes into our coffers.
exactly.
And I'm hoping you're kind of a little wrong with us getting rid of our water in Central. I didn't wanna,
We'll see.
at that time, I didn't wanna spend $5 extra
see what
million
comes down.
dollars to redo that water line, but anyway, there's a lot of, and if the 12,000 comes out of Mr. McGoy's budget,
Yeah,
I'm
if it comes
fine
out of
with
his,
it.
I'd go for
Take it out of Mike and I's
Take
shirt
it out of
budget.
yours and Mike's. You know, I want to and I don't want to, but like Mr. Hemphill says, gotta we've been thinking forward, because we didn't cause these prices to go up.
Right.
And I won't say why, but that's what happened. And, I don't know, it's good and bad here.
All right,
So that's why I
perfect.
need all your help.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the Solar Renewable Energy Funding Opportunity Letter of Intent.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? I oppose.
I oppose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Out of
Resolution.
Mr. McGoy's budget.
I ain't scared.
Resolution R 2324. Danielle, sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for Mayor and Council to adopt resolution number R-23-024, a resolution adopting the revisions to the compensation plan in the longevity pay section of the policy. The longevity pay section of the comp plan was originally written to max out at 25 years at $1,000. It is now rewritten so that longevity pay is paid starting at $200 at 5 years of service and increases by $200 every additional 5-year increment the employee works for the City of Safford in order to cover all 5-year increments that an employee may work. The recommendation is to adopt Resolution R-23-024, which revises the longevity pay practices of the comp plan. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any,
No?
sir.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion. Second. And a second to approve Resolution 2324, the compensation plan longevity pay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Would you read that in, B?
Resolution number R-23-024, a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, approving the compensation plan longevity pay policy of the Human Resources Policy Manual for the City of Safford employees.
Thank you. Item 12, ordinance number 2309, issuance of business license. Issuance of business license. Is that B? That's you also?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for Mayor and City Council to have a second reading and approval of ordinance 023-009, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 5, Section 5.04.030C, the issuance of license to update the City of Safford Municipal Code. Background is staff has received application for business licenses from applicants who are not licensed by the state of Arizona in the field that they are operating. There is not a mechanism to handle this situation in our current code. The analysis is in section 5.04.030 of the City of Safford Municipal Code, regulates the issuance of business licenses within the City of Safford. Arizona Revised Statute 9-835 has been reviewed with the attorney to clarify the language and process to make the applicants aware that they must obtain all of their state licenses before being issued a City of Safford business license. Staff is recommending that the City Council have a second reading today and the approval of ordinance 023-009, so the City of Safford Municipal Code may be updated to match the revised statute 9-835. And we had our first reading on August 14th.
Thank you, B. Entertain a motion to approve the ordinance number 2309.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second?
and a second to approve ordinance number 2309 of the business license. Any discussion?
And this is again where we talked about planning and zoning, and they're working hand in hand with you to make sure you got what you need from them before you go on and all that.
Mayor and Councilman Lopez, yes, that's correct. It was the discussion we had back on August 14th. Originally was presented by Jamie Embeck from Planning and Community Development, but it does fall under the City Clerk Office, so that's why I'm presenting the second reading and request for approval.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Would you mind reading it, NB?
Approval of ordinance number 023-009, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title V, Section 5.04.030C, issuance of license to update the City of Safford Municipal Code.
Okay, thank you. Our item 12.2, the ordinance 2311, Pheasants rezone, first reading. Jamie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is requesting a first reading of ordinance 023-011, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, rezoning Graham County Assessor's Parcel 101-08001 from R2 Multiple Family Residential District to C2 Highway Commercial District. And you have a copy of the ordinance in your packet. And this is the item that we had the earlier public hearing regarding.
Okay, anybody have anything for Jamie? Appreciate it, thank you. Going to go ahead and close our regular meeting and reconvene into account. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This concludes the first reading for ordinance number 023-011, an ordinance of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, effectuating a map amendment rezoning Graham County Assessor's Parcel number 101-08-001 from City of Safford R2 Multiple Family Residential District to C2 Highway Commercial District.
Thank you. All right, we're closing the regular meeting and reconvene into a work session. Work session is a discussion of future ordinance number 23-10. Jamie?
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and City Council to have a work session to discuss amending Title V business licenses and regulations by adopting Section 5.05, vacation and short-term rentals, to update the City of Safford Municipal Code to comply with Arizona Revised Statutes 9-500-39. And once again, this is an item that has a lot of crossover between the clerk's office and the planning and zoning department. We don't currently align with the Arizona Revised Statutes, and I've taken the lead on this project because the regulations that you'll notice that the state statute does allow are more of a zoning compliance issue than something that the clerk would handle. You have 4 bullet points in your analysis section. We cannot prohibit short-term and vacation rentals, but we can regulate them according to the state statute. We can do things such as require a notification of neighbors and property owners in the area, an extra registration fee of up to $250, requirement of sex offender background checks, and we can also add additional civil penalties for violations. Before I brought this for the work session, we had created a ordinance with the attorney with an Exhibit A, which you have in your packet, which have some things that I feel fit with the City of Safford within the state statute, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight, is what direction the council would like to go. Do you prefer something as simple as requiring a business license, or would you like something a little more robust as presented in Exhibit A? And with that, I will stand for questions.
Y'all have a chance to look at this and see all the changes that was made? Everybody happy with them?
Yes, it would be a completely new section, Mr. Mayor and Council.
You must have done a good job.
Jamie, the statute, the state statute, those are things that we can include, but we don't
Yes.
have to include.
Yes, sir.
It's at our discretion.
Yes, sir. And as I had prepared the ordinance with Exhibit A, we were in a department head meeting, and we said, you know what, let's wait and see what direction the council would like to go. So I have the work done for Exhibit A, which has been previewed and reviewed by our attorney as well. But we decided to take a step back and give another public opportunity for input and get your opinion. I don't want to overly regulate things. Occasionally, I get a little wordy, even Mr. Casella laughs. So we wanted to give you an opportunity just to shorten it or go with the option of Exhibit A.
Mr. Mayor, this is Bill Sims.
Yes.
Could I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Jamie has done a wonderful job. I've worked on these for 6 different cities and towns across the state. Some cities and towns, like Scottsdale, like Sedona, have an horrendous short-term rental problem, and they draft a very, very burdensome ordinance that the statute allows. For example, some actually require the person to operate the short-term rental to check people who get out of the Uber to see if they are registered sex offenders. There's no way that can happen. Jamie she struck a compromise. I don't think you have the kind of problem that Scottsdale and Sedona has. So what she's presented here is a reasonable compromise that doesn't go overboard and allows you to regulate. And so I think this is a good approach. The question is, do you think it regulates too much or too little? I think, in the words of Goldilocks, I think it's just about right.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would like to ask Ms. Embeck if Exhibit A is the idea of regulations that you're recommending?
Yes, sir. Exhibit A would be the addendum to the ordinance, which would have the new section of our code, which would be section 5.05. So it would be an addition in its entirety. That's why there are no red lines. It currently is not discussed in our code.
So what I would ask is that you go over briefly the recommendations that you're making so that we know exactly what those changes are.
Yes, sir. So taking the state statute and that document that we've attached, I added the definitions for the online lodging marketplace, unaffiliated third parties, transients, vacation rentals or short-term rentals, the definition of a verified violation, the rental license requirement that would include name, address, phone number of a contact, address, proof of compliance with Arizona TBT privileges, emergency point of contact, a statement acknowledging that neither the owner or their designee is a registered sex offender. If they go through a online platform such as Airbnb or VRBO, they check for sex offenders in their process. And there are qualifications to deny this application if they provide false information, if they have a suspended permit or license, and if they have not paid their fee. There is some revocation criteria in Section D. If you get 3 violations within 12-month period, 1 violation that results in or constitutes any of the following: felonies, serious injury, physical injury, wrongful death, knowingly allowing it to be rented for a special event that would otherwise require a permit. And then there are the penalties that are adopted from state statute, where up to $3,500 or an amount equal to 3 nights rent for a third and subsequent violation. Cease operations within 30 days if they don't get a permit, and they can be revoked if they haven't provided us their contact information. So out of the state statute that you've been provided, those are the items that pertain to the city of Safford, in my opinion, which goes back to the idea of, would you like to go with something like that, the middle ground regulations, or would you like to go with simply requiring them to obtain a business license?
I'd like that list, but just, I think the big sticking point is when you hear the background check version. But just to clarify, if I put my house as a vacation rental and I used Airbnb, that site will do that for me.
Yes, sir.
And if I don't use them, then I don't have to do that.
Correct, then you would
But
just
in
acknowledge.
the application of it, there'll be an acknowledgement that by the renter
Yes,
that they're not, and that won't be a problem for me either if they lie.
correct, and it's a public record and it's very simple to check
Right.
online.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, McCoy.
Are we having a problem with this stuff, or is this we need to make a rule before, I mean, is this make a rule while we can and then we can't later?
So
Or-
the state passed the statute in 2022, and we do have about 25 to 30 short-term rentals within the city of Safford currently. So it's a timely issue to address something in our code that wasn't in there previously. When our code was written about this sort of thing, short-term rentals didn't exist. We have bed and breakfasts and hotels and motels, but we don't have short-term or vacation rentals.
And I never want to.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
If you look on page 184 of the PDF, you will see 7 items that appear in the license. This was the compromise that she and I talked about. Other jurisdictions have a lot more in here. The most important of which is the TPT, the transaction privilege tax. In Scottsdale, for example, in Sedona, for example, and in Cave Creek, where I'm the town attorney, we have 80% of them not paying sales tax. This is a way you can get sales tax. Then these others are fairly easy. They're fairly not too oppressive. The name and address, but most importantly, they want to identify someone who is responsible if there's an emergency. This really is a reasonable approach. I don't think this is over-regulating, but you have every right to say, no, I don't even want to go this far. But because I was suggesting things, and Jamie says, oh, no, this is Stafford, we don't need to do that. So I think she struck a reasonable balance in 1 through 7.
I don't like more regulation than we need, and I don't know if this steps on anybody's rights as far as, is there a zone for this or a zone not for this? Like, does multifamily zoning present differently? Or, I mean, because that's almost a given that in multifamily you're gonna have some of those. Is there a difference between that?
It will not apply to multifamily. It'll apply to single residences or up to 4, and that then lease them out or license them out for short-term rentals. It doesn't apply to apartments.
And I just think we need something more than a business license, and with the work you've put into it, it probably makes sense. Even number 5, if somebody came from out of town and rented my home for a short-term rental and claims that they don't know the applicable city ordinances and laws about noise and things, I don't know if that would allow them to have kind of a get out of jail free card on certain things, but even an acknowledgement that they're going to agree with
Yes.
city ordinances makes sense. So
Yes, and then that's where the first, second, and third violations come in as
right,
well with the
yeah,
fee.
if we had somebody renting and it was and we wouldn't have any ability to to, I don't wanna say shut them down, cause I'm not interested in that either, but there has to be some sort of, I know we don't like the word regulation, but there needs to be something in place.
I don't really wanna see it as a money-making thing. I mean, I don't know what it's gonna cost to enforce in comparison to what you're gonna pull in, but
And that's something we could discuss too. It could be the same amount as any business license.
And they're already paying for that anyway, right, the business license?
They currently don't have one because it's
Oh.
not anything that's, as Mr. Sims stated, they're not paying taxes. They don't have a business license.
Oh, so they don't even currently need a business license?
No.
So the TPT, we could even do an amendment here, the same as we have in our hotels, where they have to pay the fee that,
bed tax?
the bed tax. Why is that not included in here?
That's a question for Mr. Sims. It's not included in the state law. And Mr. Sims can answer if that applies or if it's only for hotels and motels.
Mr. Sims?
I couldn't hear the question or the answer, I'm sorry.
The
Okay.
question is, why does the bed tax not apply, or can it?
It can apply, yes, it could apply.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna if you're gonna go this route, I think you should include a bed tax, but don't give it to the chamber, keep it. Although here Councilman McGoy says, don't make money with it, but
Okay. Just check.
they're not here.
Well, and the sales tax is gonna be the burden of the rentor, which I like that idea better as well, especially an out-of-town person, maybe, or family, which more likely than not they are.
Yes.
Mr. Sims, is any other city or town that you're currently an attorney for that has gone over this? Have they done the bed tax?
No, and
Nope.
so it's entirely up to you if you want to do that or not.
Okay.
Could we do
But you
this?
definitely, the other cities, the ones I've been involved in, they were very adamant that they get the sales tax, the transient, the sales tax.
Right. That's gonna be tough to manage that. You have anything else?
I just think it might be more trouble than it's worth, but that's Jamie's problem, not mine.
Yes, sir.
So essentially, at this point, as a work session, is there any significant changes to the document as presented that you would like to see us make?
I don't know. I'd like you guys just throw a number out there for a bed tax. It don't have to be the full amount, but I think that should be something that, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you do it, even if you stay one night at a hotel, you pay a bed tax. And this is the same thing, this is a short-term rental or a short-term lease or a short-term couple, 3 days, somebody comes in. And, I think that, I mean, to keep the fair market value between a hotel and me renting out my house for a couple, 3 days should be within that same margin. I mean, that's the purpose that a lot of people go to VRBO, is so they can save a little bit of money and not have to. But if we're gonna enact something like this, I think you ought to throw in a bed tax myself, but, I mean,
Any other feedback on that?
I'm interested in seeing the number, and I like the reasoning. It is a competitive issue potentially with the local motels, if a little bit of unfair advantage to the rentals.
Would the number be the same?
Well, I think we could probably make a similar profile to the way we charge a stay at a hotel. Again, I would think that it could be made equitable.
But then we could also give it to the chamber.
yeah. okay.
Well, if you recall, we decoupled it directly from bed tax now, and we have a payment every month that is standardized.
How harmless to the fort.
Think you got some direction?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going
Could we
to,
bring that back at some later times after we've had time to talk to some of the people who are doing this?
That would be great. Would you
That's
like
gonna
me
come-
to bring it back as a work session next meeting?
Yeah, because this is, I mean, we've talked about it, but we haven't heard from the other side, so, and we're gonna.
Right.
I would like to be able to discuss it again after that.
And we've had a discussion of it at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on August 21st as well. And they had a no comment or addition. So I would be happy to bring it back as another work session if you have any. We can bring those numbers back for bed tax.
Perfect.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So we want another work session?
Yep.
I think so. I don't think we're in a hurry.
Nope.
All right, finance report, P-card report. Councilman Lopez?
I didn't know what, on Westland Resources Incorporated, archaeological monitor at the ASM site. Where's the ASM site? What is that? That's a new location to me.
Secret place
Bob.
where money goes.
Councilman Lopez, we'll have to look into that. I'm not sure exactly where, Westland's right now doing two archaeological evaluations right now. One's Sanchez Road and one's Lebanon Loop, but that doesn't ring a bell for at
It's
least my
ex-
department.
Its expense is 5,000 or larger, so, I got it on page 197 if you.
I'll look into it and
If
get
you
an
look
answer to the
into
council
that.
and mayor, if that come from our department. I'm not sure if
Okay.
it's yours or not, so. Okay.
And about the only other thing is we're getting automotive parts mainly from O'Reilly's, or is it that the part place in Thatcher?
Yeah, O'Reilly.
Yeah, and they're parts that we possibly could break it up and get it in our own city limits, some of those parts. So, and we have new personnel, so maybe they don't have the message that we want them to shop here in town possibly than just going right away to that parts place and get their stuff. So that's probably the maintenance. And I believe it is a new person that's doing that. So just bring it to their attention to spend it here if we can. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, how about expense over 5,000? Is that the one you wanted to bring
Yeah,
up now?
that, Mr. Bowman already has that one.
Okay. And he already explained it to you?
Yes, he's gonna chase it down.
Okay. And revenues over 5,000? All right, we're gonna close the regular meeting. Go ahead.
We moved the executive session to the end of the meeting. I
Yeah.
know previously that was your preference anyway, so if we could put 17 after 21.
Yeah,
and-
17's gonna be down, okay.
Okay.
We're going to go ahead and go into a 19, announcement of current events.
Mayor, I have a question.
Shoot it.
Mr. Casella, are we keeping track of the vendors that are coming from out of town on the weekends?
Vendors?
Like the food?
Food trucks?
I
Yeah.
don't believe that we track it, except they would be permitted.
Okay, are we following up with them, making sure that they're supposed to be here on these dates and all that?
Councilman Andazola, for the most part, the ones that I personally see during the weekend, they do have licenses because I've had them renew within the last few months. There's been a couple, like one or two, that recently made their way into town, and they, within one day of me even trying to contact them, they got their license in order now.
Okay, and then the other place that we discussed?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's all, making sure. Thank you. Good job, Pete. Good job, manager.
Anything else under announcement of current events? I believe this is the week we go down to Mexico, correct?
Mayor Council, that's correct. So we will be down Thursday in Douglas for a ceremony essentially at the Mexican consulate there. We will stay in Douglas on Thursday night. We will then go into Cananea, our sister city, on Friday. We'll celebrate their Independence Day celebration, stay overnight Friday, and then return on Saturday.
You make it sound like it's really gonna happen.
It
Like you're
is.
really gonna return.
It is.
With or without a head.
Fingers
you will
crossed.
return. All right. Anything else under announcement of current events? Brings us to a request for future items, agenda items. I know that, I already mentioned it, I hated to see my water get pushed back, my impact fees get pushed back, over the, solar. So, I felt that you had plenty of time to present me my water case, so let's not hold me up again, okay? I want it at the end of this month, and since it took you an extra 2 months, I'm really curious to see what you guys have played with now to bring it back, so really curious on that one. Anybody have anything else under future agendas?
I did. The request for agenda items in the minutes last time was one by Councilman Arbizo where review the compensation plan going up on the merit increases. Wanted to see if it could be amended. I didn't know if something materialized with that or not, because I wasn't sure what we were looking for.
That was this
We did that
evening.
tonight, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was, okay, Danielle, okay. And then I had thrown it out there that I was hoping the resource officer would talk about bullying in the high school, bring it to their attention, so.
Is that something that you're asking to be on the agenda?
Yeah, or at least, yeah, I'm hoping we can work with the school on bullying. We've had, past 3 years, we've had some terrible things take place, and I wanted to bring that to the schools and our attention.
Okay.
Mayor Collins, Councilman Lopez, we'll make sure we had that. We actually had it on, and apparently there was a miscommunication in a conversation I had, so we will put it back on for the next meeting. It will be an operational item for our next agenda.
Okay, sir. That's all, Mayor?
All right. Report on operational items. Keenan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I begin my presentation explaining, I want to ask the city clerk to help me with the presentation, putting it on the screen. I want to thank Mr. Carbajal for assisting me tonight, as he will corroborate anything that impacts this policy and any questions that the council and the mayor may have. Before I get started, I want you to understand three components. We're going to explain why we do what we do. We're going to explain how we assess what we do. And then we're going to explain how we manage these deposit funds. And at the end, I want you to understand how this policy cut costs, how it protects profitability, and how our reserves grow and our capacity grows also. So as I begin this is an overview of Resolution R-18-017 in the City of Safford's deposit policy. The City of Safford deposit policy is designed to assess the credit risk. And I want to kind of add some words to that. This mechanism helps us to predict the probability of delinquency associated with all applicants for both new applications and continued services while protecting the assets of our utility. So this policy is based upon the use of a new technology-based screening called Online Utility Exchange, which I will probably refer as OUE. But this mechanism, whenever we screen a new applicant or a continued customer, it gives us an indication of green, yellow, and red. A green indication shows that this applicant is clean. When we assess the three components, we assess their social security number, we assess their credit, and then we assess any exchange that they may have with any prior utility department or city or municipality. So that's how we we come up with the red, the yellow, and the green. All applicants are individuals applying to be added as a secondary, on a joint account, a secondary holder. We'll use those words, secondary and primary, will be subject to a credit check. This entails a credit application process. If the credit decision is returned as red or yellow, which means they have a lower credit score or a higher probability of delinquency, the secondary applicant will be required to pay a deposit, regardless of the credit rating of the primary account holders. If the account shows a great payment history for at least a year, the payment history will apply to both primary and secondary persons on that account. Second bullet point here is if the secondary applicant applies for their own individual account 1 year later, that individual will not be required to pay a deposit because the joint account they were attached to has a perfect payment history. And the third bullet that we want to make our customers aware of is the secondary applicant requests their deposit back on the joint account that they may have paid. If the account has a year of good payment history, the check can be made payable to the secondary account holder only with the permission of the primary account holder. And then fourthly, we like to know, our customers to know, that if the secondary applicant applies for their own separate account and they have not completed a year of good payment history, the deposit that they paid on the joint account can be transferred to their own independent account with the permission of the primary account holder. So I want you all to understand that, and we will entertain questions at the end of this presentation. In conclusion, we want the council and mayor to know that these procedures apply to all utility accounts. We apply them across the board. Management enforces these procedures to mitigate the financial exposure or loss if something happens to the primary account holder of any joint account. Thirdly, we'd like to council and mayor to know that the city of Safford shall return deposits to our residential customers after 1 year and a payment history of no delinquent payments. And then finally, the online utility exchange is designed, as I said initially, to screen service applicants to determine their probability of delinquency write-offs based upon 3 criteria. Have to have a good social security number. The deposit decision is based upon credit risk assessment, and then the payment experience with other utility providers. So with that conclusion, we will open the floor if you have any questions, comments, concerns.
Go ahead, Councilman McCoy.
How does that apply to a husband and a wife?
Well, let me try to explain this, and then Mr. Carvajal can jump in. It applies to a husband and wife because at the time of the application, if a husband has let's say he has the account for several years, he wants to add his wife. Well, what we don't know is what is the history of the wife. What we also don't know is what is the status of that relationship. As you know, things change between human beings, partners. So we make the credit check. If things are good, they're good to go. If they come back yellow, we ask that they pay the $250. If they come back red, it's $500. And that's something that I did not bring it to your attention, how we assess the dollar amounts. But Mr. Carvajal can add anything that he needs to add as he is experienced in this policy.
Mayor, Councilman Magoy, what Keenan said is correct. If a wife comes in to be a joint on the account, she adds an additional risk to the account, which is why we require the wife apply for a credit application. If she comes back green, then she doesn't have to pay one. If she comes back either yellow or red, they can back out of it and not have to pay a deposit, but we do have to run a credit application to mitigate any risk.
And on the same thing, how does, okay, so let's say that my house account is in my name only, and I can't go down there and have the water turned off, nor can my wife if she's not on there, correct?
If you're the only one, Mayor, Councilman McGuay, if you're the only one that is on the account, then yes, you would be the only one available to be making.
But I'm out of town and my water's running all over the street, but only she can turn that off?
If you could get us on the phone and get permission from you with, so whenever you apply for an account, we take your social security number. So if you were to be available on the phone and provide the last four of your social security number and give permission to your wife to allow that, then yes, that is available.
So this is new, because that was not the case years ago. This is what you're proposing, or is this what we have?
Sir, up until, now this is from what I've gathered in applying and looking at the history, up until 2009, every applicant for service was required to pay a $190 deposit regardless, flat. What happened in 2009, this policy came out based upon credit worthiness. Why should I, as a good credit person, bear the burdens of someone with a bad credit history? And if they're bad, then we're paying for their bad credit. This policy was updated in 2018, as you can see here with Resolution 18. So we haven't touched this policy since 2018. So to answer your question, this policy is a blanket policy that covers as many scenarios as we could possibly come up with or have experience in order to mitigate the loss of the city. Now, don't forget, we talked about cutting costs. This mechanism does that. We talked about protecting the profitability of the city. It does that. And then we talked about how, through that system, how reserve growth opportunities. So we're able to come back and maybe hold our feet steady. We're able to participate in programs like Gifts from the Heart because we have managed our resources properly. In preparing for this, I did some study and found out through research and talking with Mr. Carbajal that in this tight economy, worldwide, Europe and North America, write-offs and delinquencies are up 2%. Right now, our rate for delinquencies is at 1.67%. So this mechanism is working, and we just apply it across the board evenly. Hope that answers the question that you have.
Mayor, Councilman McGuay, were you the fact that you were trying to disconnect services out of your name, or are you just trying to request meter check to turn the water off?
I'm in a position where if I went and bought a new house and put my utilities on, I want you to inform me at that time that, hey, if your wife's ever gonna have to come do anything with this, you should put her on here now. Because when it comes to an emergency, you're screwed. So if you're not, I mean, I'm not even the person who's upset about this, but it did happen to me. And it was ridiculous. I mean, I know somebody who has been paying a bill for 30 years in their dead grandmother's name with their check, with their name on it, and it's come out of their account for 30 years. But to put that's why it's still that way, because you won't let her put it in her name, which is
Mayor, Councilman McGoy,
ridiculous.
at the time of service application, when someone comes in to create an application, we do have listed on our application how many people will be living in the property, and it's up to the customer to put who is living in there and who may want services in their name. So you can have, at time of service, you can put the primary and the secondary account holders.
Okay, I want to make sure that happens, because it wasn't the case 15 years ago, and it caused a lot of trouble. And then in this other one, that's ridiculous that she can prove with cash checks that she's paid this bill for 30 years, but yet you don't trust her without doing another credit check and getting a deposit. That's not service. I'm sorry, it's just not.
And, you know,
So, and I'm not wanting to hammer on you, I just want to make sure some of these things are getting fixed. If we're going to fix, let's fix.
Well, 15 years ago, this resolution wasn't in place, and maybe that's why it came about.
But I'm still getting complaints about the same sort of thing, so it hasn't been fixed.
Well, may I ask a question for clarity? I just want to make sure I understand. Are you asking about service being terminated, turned off? Or are you talking about addressing an emergency? Those are two different things.
Both happened to me.
Well, I can understand that. But also, sir, we have to always understand that life happens and things changes. And I would agree, we need to maybe look this over and make some tweaks to it. I agree with you. But as it stands now, this mechanism is very effective, and it does what we need to do.
I just want our customers to be getting what they need. I'm not saying we don't need to be careful about getting our money back. But what has happened, and now that she's gone from down there, I mean, there were employees who said, "I'm sorry, sir, it sounds to me like you're not listening." That's not the answer. I don't want people to hear that.
Well, sir.
So I'm just trying to make sure that we're being service oriented, and we're not chasing a dime here and throwing out quarters and making people mad.
So Mayor, Councilman McGoy, I think there are a couple things here. One, I think we need to take a look at the application and make sure that if someone is coming in and applying for service, that we go over the application thoroughly and talk about the issues that you're talking about regarding putting someone else on the account. And the other thing is too, that there may be an opportunity to do some training as well. We've been focusing more and more on training of staff, and then maybe there's some customer service training that we can do also, because I'm not sure that we've done anything in the recent past, but that's something we can look at as well. Because I think the program as written sounds like the form contains the necessary information. It may be that we need to go over it more thoroughly. And I think in the end, as we all know, there is always going to be customers who aren't happy with the service provided, and hopefully the vast majority are. That doesn't mean we don't address the ones that aren't, but I don't know if we're ever going to eliminate them completely. But I'm sure we'll always be getting complaints.
And I apologize for the way I come across. I'm just a grouchy old man, and that's just how I sound. I'm not.
Never apologize for your passion.
No,
No, sir, there is no offense taken, because I am very, very big on customer service, both internally and externally. So we will address that, sir.
That's one of the few things that I hear constantly is, you know, and I've heard it less lately, so I think you've got a better crew up there at the front window than previously, but.
No offense, B.
Yeah, finally getting her out of there is really
Happened today.
I just felt like some of that needed to be said, so that if I continue to get that, when I come back to you 2 years from now and I'm still hearing that, it won't be foreign to you.
And again, Mayor, Councilman McGoy, I think the fact that the issue was raised by Councilman Lopez and I think brings it into this forum and has a discussion, increases self-awareness and makes us more aware of the customer service. I mean, because that's what we are. We're a service organization, and so we need to really be looking at that. I know we've had issues in other areas as well. We've talked about that. So I think it's something that needs to be a focus, but we are a service organization, and we need to be on our game. So if nothing else, conversations like this make us aware of that service, and I think that helps everybody kind of reiterate, you know, the fact that we want to provide good customer service. And again, sometimes people equate bad customer service with an answer they don't like, but I think we also need to be polite and as effective as we can in terms of providing it. So I think conversations like this are beneficial.
Thank you for listening to my rant.
I don't want to drag this out too much, but is delinquent made explicit in the policy? What actually is delinquent? Because the first page, it said great payment history, good payment history, and perfect
And I
payment
actually,
history.
Mayor Councilman Hemphill, I actually raised that very issue this morning or this afternoon. We went over this in terms of that phrase, because the phrase itself is vague. And I think that the basis, and again, they can correct me if I'm wrong, is being late, a month late, and I'm not sure what the window is for missing that payment, perhaps.
Right, those adjectives probably aren't necessary, it just needs to be
Well, they don't tell you
explicit, what is
anything.
delinquent?
Yeah, correct. And so perhaps we can be clearer on that. Maybe you.
Mayor, Council Hempel, delinquent is anything past the due date, which would be depending on what day the 20th lands on. If it's past that, then it's delinquent.
Right.
Yes.
Right, so again, that probably just needs to be
Is there
explained.
still a once a year forgiveness of that, or?
Mayor, Councilman McGoy, yes, there we do have, we call it an oops. Oops, we make it.
That's a better word.
Yeah, you miss payment. We do have, whenever the fiscal year begins, we do offer that one-time exception.
Thank you.
Almost every young couple, for example, is gonna be yellow, because they have no credit history, so they're always gonna have to pay that. And is this $500 per utility?
No, it's not, and I will say one thing, then I would turn over to Mr. Carvajal. I asked that question, and he gave me a breakdown that right now, as we sit, we're about 25% green customers, we're 50% yellow customers, and 25% red customers. And the 500, 250, and clean, there are a scale, but those entail every utility that we offer, and Mr. Carvalho can break down, one utility, two utilities, things like that.
You know, the only thing that I'd like to say, and Councilman McGoy kind of hit on it a little bit, and that is, you know, if the husband has already had his utilities turned on, and he wants his wife to be put on the account, I don't understand why you have to run her through the whole ringer. That just don't even make sense. But if she wants to go get her own utilities turned on in her own personal name, then I can understand your guys' setup. But I don't think you should be penalizing the husband or her to add her on to that, because you're still required by him. I think that a husband should be able to, or a wife should be able to add their spouse without a credit check. I think that needs to get wiped off, me personally. We shouldn't be penalizing that at all.
That's what started.
Huh?
That's what I got asked about, that.
Yeah, that needs to me, I think that customer service says absolutely put your spouse on there, because whoever's the one that originally applied for it is the person who has either paid the down payment or has passed the credit checks. But if that other individual ever wanted to go outside and put utilities in his or her name, then absolutely needs to have a credit check done or a deposit. So that's my 2 cents, and I would like for that to get addressed.
Let me throw something in there with that, because I wanna ask this. If I'm on the utilities and I go in and ask my wife be put on there, and you say, sure, jump right on it. And then I go in 3 months later and say, I want my name taken off, you can just leave it in her name. I can see where that might bite us. Because then I'm out of there,
and I'm not paying her bills, and you didn't find out that she doesn't pay her bills. So I see it.
Yeah, and I kind of sort of mentioned that in the beginning of my presentation. Now, Mayor Counts, I do agree with what you're saying, but there are times, and I was having a conversation earlier, there are times when couples, they separate or divorce, whatever, but also there are times when a young couple may have student loans and that hits their credit. So it's something that we will look at collectively, and I will do all I can working with the city manager and to make all the changes that are necessary. But like I said, this policy is there to address those unforeseen instances where we could be bitten or things like that. But it does raise the question of why do I have to have my wife run through, or husband or spouse run through a credit check when I've been here for several years? But that's the answer that we're standing on now. I'm not saying that we can't move off that.
And I think mayor and council, I think it's standard practice. Everywhere I've been, and I've been many places, whether it be getting a place to live or paying a utility, they wanted to know everybody that was gonna be in that house or in that rental, and they did background checks on everybody. So we certainly can change it if you want, but it is a standard practice. And again, my credit score is not my wife's credit score, or vice versa, if I had a wife. And when I did, they looked at them separately. So that is industry practice. Now, I'm not saying we have to keep it that way, but it's probably that way because it is the norm that they found when they put the policy in place.
All right, I think we've done beat that to death.
I move that we
Adjourn into executive session.
Can I just, before we go to executive session and vote, I just wanted to make one announcement. Apologies, I should have done it under current events, but our new electric supervisor is in the audience, Michael Cook, and today's his first day, so he's joining us today, and he has quite a bit of experience, oddly enough, in things like working with solar and stuff, so I think he may prove beneficial in some of our discussions, whether we go forward with the project or not. Certainly working with things like Box Canyon and SPA. So anyway, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce him.
Okay. Going into E-session, huh?
We don't have to vote?
Yeah, you have to vote.
Make the, second.
We have a motion and a second to go into E-session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So tomorrow,